Imagine trying to hit a bullet with another bullet. In the middle of the flight thousands of kilometers per hour. It seems impossible, isn't it? But this is exactly the reality of those who try to stop a ballistic missile. A technological confrontation where second fractions decide whether thousands of lives will be saved or destroyed. In recent years, the world has practically lived a military clash that looked like science fiction. Iran's attacks against Israel using ballistic missiles. What seemed like a confrontation located in the Middle East is actually the result of an arms race that began over 80 years ago. A story that involves Nazism, Cold War, and a technological proliferation that today threatens global balance. But before we talk about how Israel tries to defend against this threat, we need to understand, where did these missiles come from? It all starts in World War II with V-2, the first ballistic missile in history. Created by Nazi Germany, V-2 was a frightening technological leap for the time. He traveled at a supersonic speed and carried a warhead capable of destroying entire blocks in London and Antwerp. The idea was simple and brutal, launching a long-range ballistic trajectory to go up to the stratosphere and then fell with deadly speed over the target. V-2 was just the beginning. When the war was over, both the United States and the Soviet Union ran to capture German scientists specializing in rockets. It was the beginning of a new era, the Cold War arms race. For decades, the two blocs have perfected this technology. The initial focus was on nuclear dissuasion, intercontinental ballistic missiles with warheads capable of annihilating entire cities. The logic was scary. If one side attacked, the other would respond even greater force. It was the concept of guaranteed mutual destruction. But with the end of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, the world entered a new phase. The control over missile technologies got more loose. Countries that previously had no access to this type of weaponry began to develop it or simply buy it from those who sold. North Korea was one of the main sources of ballistic technology exports. And one of your greatest customers? Iran. During the last 2 decades, Iran has invested heavily in its missile program. They started copying foreign models, such as Soviet Scud, but soon began to develop their own missiles with greater reach and destructive capacity. Today, Iran has a diverse arsenal, with missiles capable of reaching targets thousands of kilometers away. Cities such as Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and even strategic military installations of Israel are within reach of a Tehran button. But to understand the difficulty of intercepting a ballistic missile, we need to look at the 3 main phases of the flight of such a missile. The first phase is that of impulse. This is when the missile is released and accelerates until it leaves the atmosphere. This phase is relatively slow compared to the next, but intercepting the missile at this time is almost impossible, because it is still in enemy territory protected by air defense systems. Then comes the average flight phase. The missile is already out of the atmosphere, flying at high altitudes and incredible speeds. This is where the most advanced missiles begin to release multiple warheads, as well as disagreements, false objects made to deceive radars and anti-lone defense systems. Finally, we have the re-entry phase. At this point, the warheads return to the atmosphere at hypersonic speed, often above Mach 10. This means over 12,000 kilometers per hour. At this speed, the margin of error for an interceptor is minimal. Defense systems have seconds, or even second fractions, to detect, calculate the trajectory and fire. Therefore, the experts say that intercepting a ballistic missile in the final phase is like trying to stop a rifle shot with another rifle shot, both in the air. In addition to technical complexity, there is another problem: the cost. Intercepting a missile is very expensive. An interceptor missile can cost between $500,000 and $1 million per shooting. The cost of manufacturing an offensive ballistic missile, such as those used by Iran, is much lower. This creates a clear economic advantage for the attacker, and Iran knows that. Therefore, they have developed several models of missiles, such as Shahab-3, Sijil, and, more recently, Fateh-2, a hypersonic missile capable of maneuvering during the flight, which makes interception even harder. Iranian doctrine is clear: to use amount and confusion to overcome the enemy defense. In the latest attacks, Iran has not only sent ballistic missiles. They used slow drones, cruise missiles, and, of course, hundreds of ballistic missiles launched in successive waves. The idea is to saturate Israeli defense systems, overload the radars, make operators make wrong decisions, force Israel to spend millions on interceptions, while the Iranian cost is much lower. But Israel was not stopped. They developed an integrated layer defense system designed exactly to deal with this kind of threat. A defense architecture that tries to cover all phases of the enemy flight. Want to know how this defense works? Which Israel technologies use to face this avalanche of missiles? And to what extent is it really effective? To face this growing threat, Israel bet on one of the most advanced and complex anti-missile defenses in the world. The defense in layers. Each layer is designed to deal with a specific type of threat and at different altitudes and distances. Starting with the base, we have the famous Iron Dome or Iron Dome. It specializes in intercepting short-range rockets and artillery missiles. Since its introduction, Iron Dome has intercepted thousands of projectiles fired by groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. But when the threat comes from medium-range ballistic missiles, such as the Shahab-3 Iranians, Israel activates another system, David Sling, also known as Honda de David. It is designed to face threats that are above Iron Dome's ability, but below long-range missiles. For long-range ballistic missiles, Israel has Arrow 2 and Arrow 3. Arrow 2 is responsible for interceptions within the atmosphere. The most modern Arrow 3 goes further. It is capable of slaughtering missiles outside the atmosphere, still in space during the average flight phase. In partnership with the United States, Israel also has access to the THAAD system, a high-altitude anti-missile defense. This structure allows Israel to create what the military call defense in depth, where several layers can act simultaneously, increasing the chance of interception. But for all this to work, you need to see the enemy before it arrives. And then the radar and command systems come in. Israel operates one of the most powerful radars in the region, the Green Pine, with a range of up to 900 kilometers. It is able to detect missile launches still within enemy territory. Once the radar identifies a shot, the data is sent to the command center known as Golden Citron, where operators have only a few seconds to make a critical decision. Which defense system will be used? What kind of interceptor will be fired? How many missiles need to be released to ensure the destruction of the target? This decision-making needs to be almost instantaneous. Every second to count. Even with all this technology, the challenges are huge. In recent attacks, especially during the first half of 2024 and again in June 2025, Iran launched hundreds of missiles in successive waves. The goal was clear: to exhaust Israel's interceptor stocks and force operational failures. In some of these offensives, Iran even launched over 450 ballistic missiles and drones simultaneously. Drones were used as distraction, slowly flying to force Israel to spend low-value targets, while the most dangerous missiles arrived shortly thereafter. Even so, Israel maintained an impressive interception rate between 85% and 90%. But the 10 to 15% they managed to pass caused considerable damage. Destroyed buildings, damaged infrastructure, wounded and even dead civilians. This limitation made Israel adopt a new strategic doctrine. Now, besides passive defense, the country bets on a triple response. First, keep the defense in depth, improving each layer, integrating new sensors, radars, and faster and more accurate interceptors. Second, perform preventive offensive attacks. This means that at the smallest sign of Iran's launch preparation, Israel tries to neutralize the launchers even before the missiles are fired. For this, they use cruise missiles, stealing fighters, armed droves, and even sabotage by infiltrated agents. Third, strengthen strategic alliances. The support of the United States has been fundamental. American satellites help detect almost real-time releases, while intelligence systems share critical data on Iranian movements. Israel has also signed agreements with countries such as Greece and Cyprus to expand their ability to monitor an early response. But the truth is that, even with all this technology and strategies, the war against ballistic missiles is a constant race of cat and rat. Each improvement in Israeli defense is answered with a new Iranian offensive tactic. Each Iranian advance is followed by an update in Israel's defense systems. Iran, for example, has invested heavily in the development of hypersonic missiles and maneuverable reentry vehicles. These types of weapons are projected precisely to circumvent defense systems such as Arrow 3 and THAAD. And to make matters worse, the psychological factor of this war is devastating. Israel's civilian population lives under constant warning. Any failure can mean the loss of hundreds of lives in a matter of minutes. And in the meantime, on the other side of the border, Iran continues to increase its production capacity, storing missiles in underground locations, hiding them in camouflaged silos or mobile launchers that change position every day. But to what extent can this Iranian saturation strategy really work? What is the limit of Israeli defense before it starts to fail critically? And most importantly, is Israel prepared for an even greater offensive? Or can the next wave of missiles be the drop of water that will break the defensive barrier? The question that many military analysts ask themselves today is, how long will Israel be able to maintain this success rate in interceptions? Because as advanced as technology, it has a physical, financial, and human limit. In the last offensive, especially between April 2024 and June 2025, it is clear that Iran is willing to test this limit to the fullest. The images of hundreds of luminous features cutting the sky of Israel, with intercepting missiles trying to overthrow enemy warheads, viralized on social networks. But what few people know is the cost of all this. Each firing of an interceptor of Iron Dome costs an average of $50,000. Already a missile of the David's sling system can reach $1 million per unit. Arrow 3, more than $2 million per shooting. And when Iran launches 450 missiles at once, Israel's expense, only with attempts to intercept, reaches tens of millions of dollars in a matter of minutes. It is a cruel math. The attacker spends little and forces the defender to spend a lot. A war of financial wear and tear as technological. That is why, recently, Israel started to bet more strongly in the preventive offensive. Based on intelligence provided by the United States and its own espionage services, Israel began to perform surgical attacks within the Iranian territory. The goal? To destroy the mobile missile launchers even before they are positioned. In addition, Israel has used its aerial superiority to maintain what the military call air dominance in depth. This means that even without having to invade Iranian airspace, Israel can reach targets in enemy territory thanks to long-range missiles, cyber attacks, and sabotage operations. Military sources indicate that Israel currently maintains a detailed map of hundreds of possible Iranian launch sites. These targets are constantly updated with satellite images, communications interceptions, and infiltrated agents' information. In recent months, F-35 Israeli fighters with stealth technology have performed dozens of recognition and attack missions. Many of these attacks have never been officially confirmed, but analysts point out that, thanks to these actions, Iran has lost dozens of mobile launchers and command centers. Another fundamental element in this invisible war is American support. The United States not only shared intelligence but also positioned THAAD and Timesys batteries at strategic points in the region, reinforcing Israel's defense. In addition, U.S. Navy ships, equipped with the Aegis system, patrol the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf, capable of intercepting ballistic missiles during the initial flight phase. Even so, the risk continues, because Iran has shown a surprising ability to adapt. Each destroyed launcher is quickly replaced. New missile models are under development, with special focus on hypersonic capacity and unpredictable maneuvers during the re-entry phase. To make matters worse, Iran has been betting on a layer attack strategy, mixing drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles in the same offensive. This combination forces Israel to divide your attention between different types of threat, further exhausting your resources. And the future? What to expect in the coming months? Israel knows that it cannot only depend on passive defense. Therefore, in addition to preventive attacks, the country works to improve its high-energy laser systems, such as Iron Beam, a technology that promises to intercept threats at a much lower cost than conventional missiles. If it works, Iron Beam can be a watershed, allowing Israel to bring projectiles to take a cost of only a few dollars per firing instead of thousands or millions. Meanwhile, Iran continues to advance. Experts believe that Tehran will soon have a sufficient hypersonic missile stock to make massive attacks even more lethal. The balance of forces, therefore, remains fragile. Each attack, every interception, every secret operation, all of this is part of a geopolitical game that involves not only Israel and Iran, but also powers like the United States, Russia, and China, who closely watch how this war of technology and intelligence is being locked. In the end, the struggle between the shield and the spear continues. Israel perfects your shield, Iran improves its spears, and the world assists apprehensive, developing a war that at any time can climb to something much bigger. Because when it comes to ballistic missiles, there is no margin for error.